We all want fairness. We do. But what happens when our idea of justice turns cold? When we judge harshly and hold grudges or demand perfection from ourselves and others? In this episode, we explore a vital truth. Justice without mercy isn't strength, it's imbalance. Whether in relationships, parenting, leadership, or your inner dialogue, justice must be guided by compassion. Without mercy, even our good intentions become harmful. Thank you for joining us today. We are the new Ashla Podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host. And joining me, as always, is my co-host, Michael.
Hey, guys.
So this is going to be kind of maybe a touchy subject for some out there today, but it's a very necessary thing we need to talk about. But before we get into the topic today, I want to let you guys know that I am almost done with our website. Michael has seen it, and he's only had 38 things that he's wanted me to fix instead of 182. So I was happy with that.
34.
34, my bad, 34. And so that's coming soon. Probably before the end of this month, you'll be able to go there and look at all the cool stuff we're doing. So keep an eye out for that. So our topic today, justice without mercy is tyranny. Wow, what a big word, tyranny. Man, he's being really dramatic today, Michael. He is.
Hey, I tell you what, it's a word you hear a lot nowadays.
It is, but like anything in this universe, there are degrees to tyranny. Right? So
100%.
There is this delicate dance between justice and mercy, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's being able to have that fairness while also having that control. Like, I think of parenting when it comes to this. You have, like, authoritative parenting next to...
Yeah, you use like 40 different political systems when you're a parent.
Yeah. And it's like you need to have that structure for the kids, but without that mercy, it just becomes nothing but demands and control, which leads to harm to the child's self-esteem and self-will. And I mean, that's just the child spectrum. We're talking about adults right now, which is, I mean, it's when we tend to judge others, judgment can be such a messy thing because it can make people black and white in their minds when they do something wrong.
Yeah. And justice is literally the cornerstone of every part of civilization. It's the glue that holds civilization together. I talk about this in my book, and justice is important, and it should be pursued. However, without mercy, it's tyranny at some level, or it's control, or it's this, or it's that. It's not justice without mercy is not justice. And mercy without justice is not mercy, but neglect in a lot of ways, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think also one thing that kind of ties into this is that whole eye for an eye mentality, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all we do is perpetuate the same problems. Think of Nelson Mandela when he stopped the wars in Africa, how he said it's like, I'm not saying we need to forgive, but we must not forget, but we must forgive.
Right.
Yeah. And forgiveness is much more than just words.
Right. Yeah, it's actions. Look at it. Look what Abraham Lincoln did. He didn't kill what would have been considered a traitor. He's like, these are our brothers, our cousins, we have to figure out a way to not forget, but to forgive and move on as one perfect union. So Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln, and there's hundreds and hundreds of more of good examples of where justice and mercy do this harmonious dance, and it works. And it's right. It's the right thing to do, really, at the end of the day. And this isn't just about courts or laws, which is really what we think of when we think of justice. We think about law enforcement and then the judicial systems and what's fair. So I'm going to kind of push our conversation today as best I can without spending a whole lot of time about courts and laws, because really what I want to focus in on, this delicate dance of justice and mercy, is how we judge, how we respond, and how we hold others and ourselves, of course, accountable.
Well, I think a key thing here, that before we dive too far into it, is, I mean, no one is beyond redemption. We talk about that all the time.
My favorite accent.
And it is important to embody this. Some people, like myself, can embody it too far. And so it's important, like you said, that someone's accountable with their actions, someone's making necessary changes, that as we're talking about having mercy with those in which justice must prevail, that it is holding people to the standard in which is correct action.
Yeah. Well, in our teachings, justice is the sword, right? It's sharp, it's precise. Mercy is the hand that guides that sword. Mercy guides justice, because without this guiding hand, even your purest of heart pursuit of truth can become a punishment for someone else unjustly, or a punishment upon yourself. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So even noble intent can become something terrible. So justice is sacred for us, right? It is sacred. It calls us to integrity and to rightness and to consequence and to accountability and responsibility and all these things that we talk about a lot. But mercy is what makes justice human, right?
Yeah.
And we can't forget the human part of this, can we?
No, it's vital that we don't.
Justice doesn't erase the wrong that was done. What it does, it refines how we respond to the wrong that was done. Does that kind of make sense?
No, I think so.
So when you're holding someone accountable, when you're bringing them to justice, mercy doesn't ignore the harm that was done. It doesn't ignore or dismiss the victims of some kind of thing that happened, but it remembers that there is a soul behind that mistake. There is a soul in a being behind that, error. So
it's like you look at all these experiments that are done within psychology and through humanity, and you look farther back and you can see some of these unethical experiments, but it's just like people adapt to their situations, people adapt to their environments.
Mhm.
And, mental health is a real thing. It always has been, and it can lead people to a lot of wrong action. But again, no one is beyond redemption, and even if someone is to drift down the wrong path, it doesn't mean they can't reclaim their sovereignty, reclaim their life,
Right.
to take a different path down the road.
Well, it certainly shouldn't. Yeah. I was having a conversation with a coworker of mine today, and they brought up the topic of how folks who have felony convictions, for example, they never stop being punished. It seems like we're not talking about these serious crimes that create great bodily harm or put somebody into complete ruin financially or whatever, right? We're talking about these low level crimes, these pot or drugs or whatever, these mistakes that humans make, and they go away and they do their time. Let's say they do their time, they pay back the debt, whether that's monetarily or whatever, but they still have trouble getting decent jobs. They can't rent apartments. They can't do lots of things because they did this thing 10 years ago, and nobody has let them forget that. So that's what he was talking about. And I agree with him. It's something that we really, but that's not really a problem of the justice system. That's our problem. We do this to each other. Us out here, we treat those people not so great. And the point I made to him was, there's not one, you'd be hard pressed to find a person in this society today who doesn't have someone in their family that has some kind of felony conviction in the past, or they know somebody. Now, oftentimes they'll treat them okay, and they'll treat them with the love and respect, but the rest of us don't, because we don't know them, and because they have this what was the word?
Stigma.
It's a huge stigma, but there was a word he used, the label of convicted felon, right? It's stamped across your forehead. It might as well be. So now in the state that you and I live in, Colorado, after 7 years, you can't even see that they had a felony, right? And that's kind of that's a good step, I think. So, anyways, I don't want to get lost in the weeds on that stuff, but this, the synchronicity of him bringing this up today, and we were doing this topic today. I just thought that was interesting. But so today we explore how to hold that sword that we're talking about with wisdom. That's kind of the path we're going to travel today, and kind of how we walk that line between accountability and compassion, and between consequence and grace. So what is, if I ask you, what is true justice, Michael? What would you say? What is true justice?
Justice is equality, it's balance. It's the ability to take things that are wrong and provide some sort of, I don't want to use the term leverage, but the ability to take these things that are out of proportion and bring balance back to them. I
Right.
mean, justice is so necessary when we have You look at lawless societies and the crime rates and things like that. You look at the economic structure and the disproportion of wealth, all these areas where there is no justice, where there is no balance,
Hmm.
and the type of chaos that creates. Through true justice, we can create equality. We can create an environment of growth, of creation.
Yeah.
I mean, again, kind of like we talked about with that no one's beyond redemption. I mean, through justice, we can help correct the errors that are happening, but we can also help new, better behaviors flourish if done correctly.
Right. Oh, well said. Because it's about restoration. It's about balance. It's about accountability. True justice seeks to correct the imbalance, right? Because you have a perpetrator, a victim, and this could be, again, this isn't just necessarily dealing with courts and stuff like that. You could have a partner um, who is who is really not doing good things to the one that to the one they love, and to the one who loves them. And sometimes there has to be a justice there. Um, so justice is here to correct these imbalances, because when something happens, we have to now try to bring things back into harmony. But a lot of people hear the word justice and they think of punishment, especially in our society. I think we incarcerate people at a huge rate compared to rest of the world, which is weird. But the whole home of the land of the free,
Yeah, we can go down a rabbit hole with that, but I'm fighting.
we could. Well, I know, and I know you and I agree on that, because I worked in that system at various levels, and
Yeah.
I seen it with my own eyes. My own eyes. No, I'm not going to get into it. I'm getting ready to
No,
go
no, we're fighting it.
sliding down. So only because I worked at a private prison for a time until I realized what it was. And I was like, I was out of there. I was not going to help that at
Yeah.
all. Anyways, I'm crawling back out of the rabbit hole. Okay, so they think of punishment, people getting what they deserve, right? You hear that a lot. Oh, he got what he deserved. That's justice. But in Ashla, we define it differently. It's not about revenge. Again, it's about that restoration, that balance, and the accountability to bring things back into balance. We don't wield that sword of justice to hurt. We do it to heal, right? Because healing happens when there's a return to balance, return to harmony. Um, and injustice distorts that flow. It just true justice restores it.
Well, I think revenge is such a good point because I think so many people, when it comes to justice, and I think everyone consciously, when we think about justice, when we think about laws and everything else, we have the same mentality of equality, but when we are the ones who have injustice served upon us, revenge is always the thing that comes to that surface. It's when the ego's like, how dare you trespass on me or do these horrible things? Let us make a stand and get retribution. And it's that exact type of mentality and feeding of the ego that can lead to loss of self, loss of values, and truly character defining moments that could lead us down the path of darkness.
Yeah. And like all of our work, all of the things we teach and practice, finding this true justice, it's about facing reality. It's about meeting reality where it is. It's about looking clearly at what is and trying to do so without flinching, without turning the other cheek, or without looking the other way, because it holds us responsible not just for our actions but for the ripples that we create. That's why we're very careful. That's why we stop and we breathe and we think about what this will do beyond the initial thing that I'm going to do.
Well, I mean, everything has a ripple effect. It has to be balanced across the board because if we're too focused on justice in one area, what injustices will come of trying to bring balance to this one thing?
Mm-hmm.
We must have a higher perspective beyond the things in which we are concerned about.
Yeah. One of our 12 agreements is justice. Another one is fairness. Another one's mercy. We're kind of hitting all three of these today. And what this really means is we pledge, Luminari, we pledge that we will uphold fairness in all things, stand for what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So justice isn't selective. We can't ever just say justice for this, no justice for that. It has to be across the board, right? Stand for what's right, uphold fairness in all things. So justice is not selective. It's not for convenience or what's popular. We don't care about popularity on this path, do we? It doesn't only apply when it benefits us. And that's the time when you really should focus in on it, because it's too easy to kind of slip around when you may benefit from this course of action, especially if you're in a tough spot, right? So justice, this is what justice says. Speak the truth when silence would be easier. Stand up, use courage. Protect the innocent even when it costs you something. Hold firm to your principles even when the world tries to twist them. But justice without mercy becomes a very cold doctrine, right? It's just very clinical and sterile and cold, and there's no soul to it. There's no humanity to it. And that's really the kind of the crux of the problem here is when we have justice and it's cold and we don't have mercy there, it just strips the humanity out of it. So,
well, I mean, you see that so much today where it's just like, I mean, social media loves to feed the flames of emotions, but it's just like, how often is the narrative being designed specifically to provoke those emotions of outrage and provoke those emotions of injustice without seeing the full picture, without having all the facts?
right, right. Um, I've had people, you say that and remind me of something. I've had people, a few people over the years, a few more recently, say, hey, I see you're doing the podcast thing again. Everything sounds great. You guys look great. I'm digging it. But you could do so much better and get better numbers and start making tons of cash if you started to just talk about topics that are very divisive. And we could. Oh, I could think of 100 things right now that we could be talking about that
Oh,
would
yeah.
that would
Top of the
just
list.
get the clicks. Click, 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 click. We don't do that because that's not the truth. Period. Period. If it's not the truth, I won't say it. If it's not the truth, I won't do it. If
And
it's
we're
not
not about popular opinion.
if it's not an inroad to truth, which is connection with source, I'm not interested. I'm not gonna waste my time. Yeah, Michael and I could be driving around in Ferraris and maybe, I don't know, but I don't care. I'm not doing that. So, because truth is what we seek here. And our agreements and our axioms and our codes are very important to us because they help us remember, yeah, you could do these things over here and be successful, or you could do these things that we are doing and stick to this path and do some extraordinary things. Um, they're just a little more quiet. You can't really see them because they're not boastful, they're not boisterous, and they're not divisive. So when justice lacks mercy, this is something I dealt with for most of my, we'll say, adult career, because I was an enforcer of law, an enforcer of rules, an enforcer of all these things. And one important thing I learned very early on was that you cannot enforce these things without having some kind of compassion, because then justice becomes cold. It becomes lifeless. It becomes soulless. And eventually, if you do that enough times, it becomes like a weapon of harm instead of a precise, sharp, cutting weapon. It becomes just a blunt weapon that you just beat people over the head, which is, again, without going down a rabbit hole, these things are pretty easy to see in our recent history. And I mean recent, like last 100 years. So like one thing a mentor of mine taught me, and this guy could approach a group of people, and they could all be going away for a long time. And I don't know, the way he approached people, the way he talked to them, and this goes beyond the whole verbal judo thing that they teach you. This guy actually gave a crap. This guy actually cared. And when he still did his job better than anyone I've ever seen, but he did it with compassion and empathy. He still upheld those laws and those rules and those things. But the way he did it, I never seen that guy fight, rarely. And usually if he was fighting, it was because he was jumping in to help me or someone else who didn't quite do it. But, he would tell me, he'd say, look, when you go up to somebody, you already know that you have to do this thing. This end result, you have to do this. You have to arrest them. You have to give them a ticket or whatever. Whatever the case may be, you have to do this. That is non-negotiable. But you don't have to you don't have to go up to them in a certain way. So he taught me, before you go up there, just remember, this might be the worst day of their life. And you might be just making it a little worse, right? They may have lost a loved one. They may have been fired from their job. They may have, there's 100,000 different things that can ruin a person's day, let alone their week or their month or their year. So always remember that everybody's going through something that you have no clue about, and you should approach them in that way. Of course, dangerous situations, it was all business. You just go bang, 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 you're doing your thing. It's all business. But when you don't have to lock in, approach them with a little bit of empathy, a little bit of compassion. He would say, he told me one time, he's like, I always like when it's just a regular thing, like they broke an ordinance or they did something where they're probably going to get a ticket. He would always say, I'd play a game with them without them knowing, but the game was talk me out of it, talk me out of giving you a ticket type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
right. So he would have that mindset. Of course, he still had that officer safety awareness and stuff like that. But if he see things, I mean, this guy should be the model of every person who does jobs like this. But yeah, he would play this little game with them, and he'd let him talk him out of a ticket if it was something that he could do, simply because it breaks the ice, it calms everything down. So, but we've all seen and heard. I mean, the internet's full of thousands of videos of people where it's just all business all the time, bang bang. I don't care what you're going through, you know,
Yep.
and that rarely works out well in those kind of situations where it's not really an emergency. When we enforce these things without some empathy, without compassion, over time, justice gets distorted, becomes something other than a tool of balance into this, like I said, this kind of blunt weapon that we just beat people over the head with.
Yeah. Well, and kind of like what you're describing, I mean, when we have these opportunities that can be educational for people, if we can remove the shame from it, the blame, the
Yeah.
accusations, if we can morph it into a learning experience, take it back to the parenting. You get away from shouting at the kids to be trying to show them where they're wrong. They can learn, they can grow from it instead of be afraid to act this way or act out because of it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
same goes for an adults on that one.
Right. So you were talking about parents earlier. Consider that kind of parent who just punishes a child without seeking to understand kind of that pain beneath their behavior. As a dad, my first goal was to first stop the behavior, stop it, especially if it was something that was going to lead to them, being electrocuted or something. Now the old folks would say, just let them do it. Just let them. No, I'm not going to let my kid electrocute themselves. Sorry. Uh, but who just, it's all punishment, 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 and without seeking or trying to understand, because a lot of times the kid's just copying the parent, and the parent's doing things they may not even be aware of, right?
Oh man, I tell you what, I've seen it so often where you got that, especially when you got like that really angry parent and the
Yeah.
kid acts out a bunch, and it's like you can say it's a bad kid, but the kid is learning from the parent how to behave.
Dude, they're learning from someone they're hanging out with. And if
Yep.
they're a little kid, they're learning it from you.
One of my favorite parenting sayings, your kids don't become who you tell them, they become who you show them.
That's right. Yes, they do. Or take the example of a leader who governs with fear, or who just demands obedience and loyalty and blind loyalty, blind obedience, instead of, no, I don't know, cultivating a little bit of trust. Lots of examples of that these days. Another example, the inner critic. We talk about the inner critic all the time, that judge, that heartless, soulless bastard that just judges us over and over and over again. And it never offers grace. And it's always just punishment, harshness. No matter how much you've grown, no matter how you did your time, but now you're stuck in rumination. So these are all examples of justice lacking mercy. And they're all kind of in different things, right? What could have been a moment of healing is really becomes a moment of harm. And again, the purpose of justice is not to crush and annihilate and give them what they deserve. It's to correct, and it's to restore, and it's to ultimately lead to healing, which is balance and harmony.
Not so well said. Because that's really what we need more of in the world. If we keep going for prosecution, we keep going for justice in the form of retribution, then we're never going to create something better. Some of the best people I know were the ones who had gone through the most crap, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them messed up a lot more than other people. But part of
Yeah.
messing up is learning. And
Yeah.
if people are willing to show they're willing to learn, if people are willing to show the aptitude to become better people, man,
Yeah.
people will flourish.
They do flourish. Michael, tell me about the power of mercy. What does mercy do?
Mercy gives people chances. Mercy gives people hope. Mercy is one of the most important skills we can cultivate because it's what allows us ourselves to heal from things that have happened to us. We've talked about in recent episodes radical accountability, radical honesty, radical authenticity, all these things rely on our ability to have mercy. We are all flawed human beings, and if we can have the grace, the mercy to allow other people to be not perfect human beings, we can foster a space for us to become better human beings.
Yeah.
Mercy is the fertilizer that causes the garden to grow lush. With mercy, we can allow people to learn from us. I mean, again, being the example, if we can give someone who wronged us mercy, we can give them that same insight and possibly mercy down the road for them for someone who then does something against them. And above all, if there are any reason to cultivate mercy, it's to give ourselves peace. Through the mercy of forgiveness, through the ability to let things go. And it doesn't mean allow people to continue to walk on you or transgress against you, but through the mercy of letting wrongs go in our lives, it gives us the space, the energy, the clarity to move forward and not be held back in the past.
Yeah, well said. We talk about reacting versus responding. That's something that we make distinction of on this path and in our teachings, right? To judge and condemn, that's really easy to do. It's almost automatic. That's a reaction. To offer mercy, that takes strength and it takes wisdom, and it's much harder, right? But that's a response. To offer mercy is to respond to something that's happened to you. To judge and condemn, that's just knee-jerk reaction. And of course, our teachings tell us to get away from reactions and get into responding. So, because mercy would say to you, I see what you've done. I see your mistake. I see your error. I see the wrong that you did, but I can still see your worth. I can still see the potential that you can be, right? And again, mercy doesn't, and people will argue this point I'm about to make with me until I'm dead. And probably beyond that, when I'm gone, and they're reading a book I wrote, and they're like screaming at me still, right? It does not excuse the wrong. It does not excuse wrongdoing. It doesn't excuse any of that accountability piece, right? But it also refuses to define someone by their lowest moment, their lowest point.
Well said.
It helps us remember that we are not just the sum total of our mistakes. We are beings in a sacred process of continued growth, or stagnation, or refinement, or forgetting our true nature, or returning. It can be all of these things. Here's our paradox of the day. So mercy helps us walk that higher path, to respond instead of react.
I think it's so important because when we're able to approach situations, like I was saying earlier about how through having mercy in situations, we can cultivate growth instead of developing all these negative emotions and putting all this blame on people. We can create that space of healing. But through that discernment, through that ability to pause and really address the situation from a level-headed point of view, you can have the conversations that really make the biggest impact.
And actually show someone a glimmer of hope and a glimmer of possibilities. I don't like to call it the void. I like to call it the field of possibilities. That is the much greater thing here. This is a courageous path, though, to walk this high road, to not push down or try to ignore the wrongdoing someone did to us, but choose to be merciful, right? That takes courage, because mercy doesn't ask us to see not just what someone has done to us, but why they did it and what they might become if given the chance to do better. Axiom of light: no one is beyond redemption. This is a fundamental, foundational, my favorite axiom, because if you try to live by this, you will respond and not react. You will see and respect that. Even if you can't respect what they've done or what they're doing, there's still that spark in them that we have to remember that is interconnected with us and every other thing in the universe, So we have to not ignore what someone has done, but try to understand why. And why would we do that, Michael? Why would we try to understand why they did a thing?
Because in the end, there's always a why.
Mm-hmm.
And often, I love how you said it earlier. We can't judge people based on their actions and their lowest moments.
Right.
I mean, yes, we got to be discerning from that. We got to understand their character, and we got to have discernment in how we approach these individuals. But if we were to judge someone for their lowest moment, we're missing out on everything above that, which is everything else about them,
Yeah.
especially those in connection. I mean, my question for you is, and this is kind of off topic, but it's like, what do you do when you have these moments where you give a path, someone crosses this line, you give them an avenue to redeem, to rebuild, and they want to do everything but that avenue?
That's a good question. And that leads us to some of those heartbreaking moments that we have along this path. Because as we talked about in our free will show, as much as it breaks our heart, all we can do is what we can do. We offer them an avenue. We offer them a path to redemption. Now, I'll remind everybody, redemption doesn't come from us. Redemption, us giving it to others. They redeem themselves. Only they can be redeemed themselves. You can forgive them. They can find forgiveness for themselves, but there has to be a few things that come along with redemption. They must, acknowledge and accept responsibility and accountability for what they did. Then they need to seek forgiveness. Whether they get it or not is irrelevant, because they have to make those amends, or at least try. And you know what? At the end of the day, you offer someone a path towards redemption, or a path towards, growth and whatever. And if they decide not to take it, then you cut them out. You have to cut them out, because that behavior, and there's axioms on this too, starts to become like a cancer in your own life and in your own energy. So as heartbreaking as it is, and I've done this more times than I can count by now, you have to cut them out and just trust that their path will lead them to redemption, or to growth, or to that.
No, and I appreciate the clarity there. You know my struggles with that
Yeah,
exact topic, and I think you hit the nail on the head. And it's good to show the contrast, because as we talk about redemption, as we talk about forgiveness and mercy, we
right.
also, being this path being one of authenticity and of doing the right thing, we have to come to we have these moments in our life that aren't as easy as black and white. There's
Yes.
needing to know where those boundaries lie, where those lines in the sand are, where we have to do what we need to for our own peace,
Right.
and as well as to help others' growth. I mean, I think back to my 7-year relationship where I was helping someone struggling with addiction, and that constant enabling. Every time I'd make a boundary and it'd get crossed, I would just
Mm.
accept it and eventually try to reassert it, and nothing happened. And it led to so much stagnation, not just in my life, but in their life,
Right.
because as we save people from the consequences of their actions, the bill comes due eventually, and often it accumulates a lot of debt.
Yeah, it does. It does. And the bill comes due. As we talked about in our last episode, we have our path, others have theirs. We must respect free will. We must respect the law of confusion. And like I was telling you, there was not a lot of times, but there were times where I just wanted to not let you go through things, because it was breaking my heart. But I had to let you go through it. I had to. No matter how much it tore me up to watch you go through some of these very painful things, and you were dealing with a ton of grief on top of it, and you just this and this and this, and it was almost like, you were being buried alive, and all I could see is your fingertips poking out every once in a while. But then, I just wanted to reach in there and just pull you out of it and say, listen, we'll do this another lifetime. But we can't do that. We have to let them go through it. We could sit with them. At some point, we get to this place where they're not listening. They're not taking our advice. They're not. And we have to cut them loose and trust that there is another teacher out there that maybe can help them, or another person that can help them, because we weren't meant to save everyone.
Yeah.
I believe that. I don't know if that's a set in stone thing or a universal law, whatever, but it's been my experience that I can't help everyone. And the sooner you realize that in these interactions, and the sooner you realize that in these relationships, the better, because it will kind of keep that heart from breaking too much,
Yeah.
because it sucks.
Well, again, it's like, I mean, I look at God and life and our connections all as a tapestry, and it's all so perfectly interwoven. And as much as it may seem messy where we're being woven in now, the
Yeah,
greater picture is beautiful. And often, some people are there in our lives for a long time. Sometimes they're there for a season. And it's not up to us to judge if we had the impact we needed. We had the impact we had.
right.
And whatever was left in their journey isn't our responsibility, because this is their journey,
That's right.
wherever that may lead.
We do our best and trust in the process. We do our best and trust in the rest, right?
Yeah. Give it to God.
You know, you don't have to feed the 5,000. You just have to bring some bread and some fish. That's all you got to do. And not worry about whether that was super impactful or not. Doesn't matter. So you brought us perfectly into this next part I want to talk about. We're talking holding both discernment and grace. It's easy to fall on one side or the other, as you said, black and white, right? It's really easy to do that because that's a reaction, and it's usually an emotional thing or an egoic thing. Both of those things are automatic. We just do them. And to swing that, sort of justice without pausing or considering the consequences or the ramifications or those ripples that we talked about. And so there is a space in between. There's a space in between here where discernment and grace kind of help us navigate the reaction into a response. So if we can just hold that reaction off just a little bit, then we have a better chance of responding, allowing grace and mercy to kind of, interject in there and kind of help us do these things that we're talking about today. So justice without mercy, as we say, is tyranny at some level. It punishes without caring, without understanding, without any humanity. It creates fear eventually and zero respect. People won't respect it. People won't respect you. It may uphold the law, but not all laws are right. We're talking about, right and wrong. We're talking about good, being a good person. Not all laws are good. Not all laws are right. There's been many that have been put in place and eventually taken down because, well, we won't go down that rabbit hole either, but.
Yep. I know I'm having so many pop in my head, and I'm just like, no, trying to channel the thoughts back in the conversation.
And mercy without justice is just permissiveness. As you said, it was, you gave the example. You erected your boundaries, and when they were crossed, you just kind of excused it or made justifications for it. But really, at the end of the day, you were just giving them permission to just trample on your boundaries over and over again. And eventually, what does that enable? Really harmful behavior, right? It sacrifices the truth for temporary peace, which is not true peace, stillness, peace. It's just keeping things quiet and not so chaotic for just a moment. And it may soothe the moment, but it breeds that imbalance long term, right?
Yep. For all those people pleasers out there, let me tell you, boundaries, as much as they benefit your peace, are just as beneficial for the people in your life. When you start asserting yourself like that, you teach people who struggle with respect to learn respect.
Right.
You teach them that they need to have lines within themselves to respect other people. It's so important.
Yeah. So this path, the path we teach, at the end of the day, it encourages us to not sit on the fence, but to walk the middle path between these two things, because again, there's a space in between, true justice and injustice. And where that space is in between is where we would interject discernment and grace in equal measure so that we can ensure that we're responding as justly and as fairly as we can. At the end of the day, no, we're humans. We're going to screw it up. It's all right. It happens. I wanted to talk about, I want to pick your brain about this next part, how we deal with this justice and mercy within ourselves.
And this is a good topic right here. We could do a whole episode on this. In fact, I feel in some senses we have. I think most of us, honestly, those especially who are still not really into this scene yet, I think most people in life don't even realize how little justice and mercy they give themselves. Mm-hmm. Even the most egoic people struggle deeply with a sense of mercy for themselves and a sense of justice for themselves. Yeah, they might assert their boundaries. Yeah, they might come down on other people and be angry at the littlest things. But it's all out of this strange dance within them of self-hatred. Mm-hmm. And justice and mercy must happen within before it can happen externally. We talk often about how you can't fix the world from the outside in. You have to do it from the inside out. Mm-hmm. People are constantly trying to conform the world around them to fit their own comfort. But we must adjust ourselves where we can be comfortable in any situation. Only when we can give ourselves justice and mercy can we go with the ebb and flow and allow ourselves not to be controlled by outside forces.
Right. Yes. True justice isn't self-condemnation. It's not judging yourself over and over in a vicious cycle. It's honest self-inquiry. It's that honest look in that mirror. It's owning your actions without collapsing under the weight of them. And really, you make a mistake, and it could be a big mistake. but it really only comes with so much. It gets heavy when you just keep stacking on it over and over and over and over again.
You shove it down.
Right.
We got to process these things. And again, we are all flawed human beings. The moment we
Mm-hmm.
can accept that we are not perfect, the moment we can accept that we are going to mess up, I don't care how good you are, how far you get on this path, you will have days you slip and fall right on your face thinking you're doing everything right. And that is completely normal. It is okay. And give yourself mercy in all situations.
Mercy, grace. Yeah.
If you don't do that, you're going to
Throw
condemn
in a pinch
yourself.
of,
That leads to more behavior like that.
right. Throw a little pinch of what was I going to say? I almost said throw a pinch of condemnation in there because
I
you
know,
said
I heard you go in
condemnation.
that direction.
I was like, no, pour that out. Yeah, give yourself a little love,
Compassion. That was the word.
compassion, empathy. Yeah. So we're allowed to make mistakes, and we all do, and we do it. We're not perfect. We're not supposed to be perfect. So
One thing I got to throw on this
yeah.
about justice, you see so much in the world projection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most projection comes from repressing our own faults. When we do things wrong and we shove it into the corner, we bury it under the rug. When we have these character traits that we know are not good, and instead of accepting them, acknowledging their existence, we push them in a dark corner, it psychologically will create this projection in our mind of disdain and resentment towards anyone who shows any sign of these very things we have done or have inside of us. Which
Right.
is one of the biggest issues you see in society today is everyone feels like they have to be these perfectly moral citizens. So they shove all their faults into this corner, but then project and judge everyone else for the
Right.
same things they have going on. We
Mm-hmm.
gotta stop trying to strive for these masks to who can put on the best show of being a flawless human being, you know?
Yeah. It's simply yes, this happened. Yes, I must learn, which is hard to say, right? Sometimes. Yes, I must learn. And yes, I am still worthy of love and healing and empathy and compassion and mercy. But I must face justice too. So, what are some good ways we can practice this, Mike?
Journaling. I know we talk about it all the time, but if we can
Mm-hmm.
journal about these things we've done, find the humanity within the moments of weakness, we can begin to understand ourselves from a much more empathetic place than something so harsh and judgy.
Yeah.
So that's one key thing we can do. I think another important thing is look at the areas in life where you don't know how to have hard conversations.
Mm.
There's something you're repressing there that's making it where your mind does not want you getting close to it. And it
Yeah.
flares up your nervous system. It makes you defensive. All right. You got to see where the beam in your eye, where it comes from. You got to figure out what it is inside of you that is so adamant about standing your ground in one place, shape, or form.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. I have one similar to that. It's truth telling, right?
Yeah.
Truth telling, but with compassion. Practice speaking truth gently, or as gently as you can, or as gently as the situation calls for. None of these things are set in stone. Life is fluid, it moves, and people are all over the place sometimes. So, the point I'm making is you don't have to yell to be clear or to be heard. Just like you don't need to shame someone or yourself to have accountability. Of course, the pause. The pause is always going to be here because we try to alchemize reactivity into response, reaction to respond. And you do that by pausing. And it's just that simple. It takes a lot of practice, but if you're feeling real judgy today and you see something or you're dealing with somebody, instead of tearing their face off, maybe pause and ask yourself, what am I seeking here? What am I trying to get out of this? Am I trying to help them or am I trying to just destroy them, right?
Yeah. Man, I'll tell you, there's days where it's like I'm in that place and it's like someone reaches
Me
out,
too.
someone has a problem, and I just want to be like, "Are you stupid?" And it's like, "Nope.
Yeah.
I am going to I'll give them the minimal of just like, man, that sucks. I feel for you." And I'll
Yeah.
leave it at that. It's like I know
Yeah.
where my boundaries are with myself. I know if I
Right.
engage in this conversation that I'm just going to get in my own place with it, and it's like that's not going to be constructive. I can come back to this later and find a way to make this much more productive of a conversation.
Right. Pausing, breathing before you judge. It just gives you a chance to kind of think about it, to respond instead of react. The embodiment of our 12 agreements. is a great way to do this. Do you have any final words for us today, Michael, before we move on to our prayer and on to our other fun activities?
This is one of the more challenging things when it comes to shadow work, when it comes to self awareness. This is one of the areas that all of us struggle with, myself included, where it's easy to get stuck in our biases, it's easy to get stuck in our opinions, and it's easy to get stuck in our own views of what ethics are.
Yeah.
So approach this with grace and discernment, but don't be afraid to talk about this with people, to get outside perspectives. One of my favorite things to do is to read or listen or digest things that are contrary to my own opinions because it gives me food for thought from a different perspective.
Right.
And there's no shame in being wrong about things. The minute you can start admitting when you're wrong and being willing to grow from that instead of persecute yourself and try to get off this moral high ground you think you're on, the more we can create a space where we can all have meaningful conversations and find true justice, true mercy, and above all, true authenticity.
Well said. Thank you for that. So I have a prayer for us that touches upon this message we're giving today. So as always, let's close our eyes. Divine presence, light that sees all and judges none. Anchor me now in truth and compassion. May I stand firm in what is right, but never forget the humanity within each soul. Let my actions reflect the wisdom of justice, tempered by the tenderness of mercy. I seek justice, but love only mercy. Where I have judged too harshly, soften my heart. Where I have enabled harm in the name of kindness, strengthen my voice. May I never use justice to punish, nor mercy to excuse. Instead, let me become a vessel for healing, a steward of balance, a bringer of light where there was once division. I release the need to dominate, to condemn, to control. I step into sacred responsibility to restore, to uplift, and to protect the dignity of all. Let my hands carry the sword with care and the olive branch with courage. May my presence be a sanctuary of discernment and grace. This is the way of Ashla. Not justice alone, not mercy alone, but the unity of both, in the service of light. And so it is. Our affirmations for the day. I hold others accountable with compassion, not condemnation. I choose understanding over judgment, even when I'm hurt. I am just in my actions, but merciful in my spirit. I release the need to punish and embrace the power to heal. I see the humanity in others, even when they fall short. I offer grace without enabling and boundaries without cruelty. I forgive, not to erase the past, but to heal the future. Our exercise for the day, we're going to call this one the scales within. And not like snake scales, Michael. The scales of justice, right? The purpose of this exercise is to reflect on how we hold others and ourselves to the standards of justice and whether mercy is present in that judgment. So our first step, of course, is to close our eyes and settle our breath. Find stillness. Big breaths in and out. We're going to do that as many times as we need to find our place, to find our comfortable, happy little place, right? We want to bring our mind to a recent situation and go back as far as you need to, where someone let us down or broke our trust or made a mistake or trespassed against us, whatever it may be. Don't analyze it, just feel it. Our next step is to observe our reaction. And by asking ourselves, what was my immediate response? What was my reaction? In other words, was it blame, anger, withdrawal? Did I swing? Did I powerbomb them? What did I do? Did I seek justice? Did I offer mercy? What did I need in that moment? And what might they have needed? This is the tricky part. Step 3 is to switch that viewpoint. Now recall a time, go back as far as you need to, when you failed, or you made a mistake, or you trespassed or hurt someone, and ask yourself, how did you treat yourself afterward? Was you fair? Was you cruel? Did you allow space for learning, or did you continue to punish yourself? Step 4 is to write it down. Take a blank piece of paper. Hopefully you have a journal book and there's a page in there you can use. And on one side, write the word justice. So you're going to open it up like this. Find you 2 clean pages and you're going to open them up. And on one side, you're going to put justice. On the other side, you're going to write mercy. And under each column, I want you to write these for justice. Where do I hold others accountable? Where do I hold myself accountable? Is it fair? And on the mercy page, where do I extend grace? Where do I struggle to forgive or to soften or to offer grace and mercy? Step 5 is you're going to go to the bottom of the page. What would alignment with Ashla look like in this situation? And you can do this for both. And again, as always, let this answer come from a true place within you, not your ego, not just your mind, not just something you heard on Facebook Reels. Go deep. Look for that true spot. Use your intuition. And our journal prompts today. I'm giving a lot of homework away today.
Yeah, you are.
And our journal prompts for today. Where in my life am I quick to judge without understanding? What assumptions am I making about others' intentions or growth? Our next one is, what does justice mean to me? Not just in society, but in my own relationships, in my intimate places. What does justice mean to me? Is it about fairness, retribution, restoration, something else? And the last one I have, when have I withheld mercy from someone who may have needed it? What fear, pain, or belief was driving that response? So I know I gave you guys a lot of homework today, but it's good for you.
Through that, though.
It's good for you. So great topic today. It's a tough one to talk about. It really is. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate the time you spend with us. Please don't forget to like and share and subscribe and just help us expand our reach, help us get the word out there. Of course, if you ever have comments, concerns, questions, you know where to find us. And pretty soon we're going to have that website up and you'll just be able to go there and get everything you need. So, Mike, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you, buddy.
Of course.
We love you guys. And with love and gratitude, ad Lucian.
Ad Lucian.